police, 9 people are dead and 10 others injured after a shooting at a shopping center in Germany. The shooting happened about 6 p.m. local time at the Olympia shopping center in Munich. Of the 9 people killed, police say one person committed suicide. Officials are also trying to find out if one of the shooters is among the dead. Police say they're looking for up to 3 suspects, but no information about the attackers has been released. Special forces from neighboring states and the German federal police are responding to Munich to help with the search and investigation. Police are asking people not to share videos or images of the shooting or police activities on social media because it might help the suspects. Public transportation was shut down after the shooting, and Munich police advised people to stay where they are. The U.S. Department of State issued a warning echoing those sentiments, telling America.
We received reports that a gunman had opened fire in a shopping centre in Munich. According to witnesses, the shooters started firing rifles shortly before 4 o'clock at a McDonald's at the Olympia shopping centre in the north of the city. Now, Munich police say witnesses have also reported shootings in Hanover Street and Ries Street, which are around a 9-minute walk from that shopping centre. Public transport all over the city has been suspended and the main train station has been evacuated.
The police officers will be very keen now to, well, understatement, but absolutely keen to locate where these suspects are. And of course, if you're able to put your guns away or throw your guns away and disappear into the crowd, then that's an even more difficult thing for the police to do. I would imagine they'd be looking at the CCTV cameras actually, because that will give them a good identification to try and work through. But this is a very difficult time for police. They need to locate these people, contain them in an area that they can control, and then bring them to justice. But it is a very difficult thing, especially when the transport system would have been open for quite a time after these incidents were taking place.
And of course, we've got very confused reports coming out of Munich tonight about exactly how many locations, how many shooters, how many might have been injured or indeed killed in this situation. Normal for this kind of event?
Absolutely normal, and actually I've heard that there were 3 attackers, but that could end up being just 1, because obviously attackers are able to move. Different people see them in different locations and make phone calls to the police or report that to the police. So it is a time of confusion and chaos, and of course it's the police job there now to bring that chaos under control. And it is a very difficult thing, but locating this person or people is the most important thing now.
Thousands of people celebrated at Jerusalem's 15th annual Pride Parade. The march took place with a sea of balloons, banners and rainbow flags. There was a prominent showing of Israeli police prepared to secure the march. But no incidents were reported despite the city's conservative reputation.
I think that the Israeli police and the Jerusalem district did everything they can to prepare to secure this march, and I hope everything will be okay. I think we see here thousands of people, and this is the best answer to those violent people who are trying to spread hate.
Past Pride parades in the Holy City have seen anti-gay protests and violence. In last year's parade, an extremist killed a teenage girl and wounded several other people when he jumped into the crowd with a knife. He was sentenced to life imprisonment.
Ignition. Lift off.
If you don't represent women in politics.
It's the worst drought in more than 2 decades. And it has plunged the southern African region into its worst food crisis. 18 million people need emergency food assistance in 7 countries. Lesotho, Madagascar, Mozambique, Swaziland, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Malawi have all had their crops severely affected by the El Niño-induced drought. With the World Food Programme declaring the region as a level 3 emergency, the agency is rapidly scaling up life-saving operations to help millions of hungry people.
We're trying to do it by bringing relief assistance, either food or cash or a combination of both, to support the most vulnerable people in the drought-affected countries in the region. This year, because of the drought, the needs are so great, and the domestic food stocks are so depleted. We're just after the harvest, but these are people who just have enough food for only a few more weeks. So we're actually starting our relief operations in Malawi, for example, this month. So that's 6 months ahead of what would be normal, and for a hugely increased caseload of people.
The UN Food Agency would like to reach out more, but resources are already strained.
Well, they do have a huge security deployment, 85,000 police, troops, firefighters, traffic cops. That's more than double what we saw in London. For a long time, they've been saying that they were prepared for any eventuality, including a terror attack, but that they considered it highly unlikely because there is no history of terrorism in this country, no homegrown networks, if you will. So while they have been carrying out, for example, terrorism drills, anti-terrorism drills, we went to one on the platform of a train. This really does raise everything to a whole new level. People will be, I would believe, much more on edge. Just driving around yesterday, we saw soldiers on every corner along the main street on Copacabana Beach. The Marines are going to be really patrolling that area. They've got the National Guard, a special police force already moving in to cordon off all of the venues. After the attack in Nice, they said they were going to widen out the perimeters around the venues, implement more checkpoints, even for the ticket holders going into the venues. There'll be 3 phases there. First of all, they'll have their IDs. When they get to the venues, those will be checked against a database provided by numerous international intelligence agencies. Once they get through that, of course, there will be the metal detectors. All belongings will go through that, and then they're going to have 10,000 plainclothes police stationed throughout the different venues, just keeping an eye on things there, trained to look for suspicious activities. So they have been preparing, they have been training, but up until now, the general feeling and what we've heard from officials is, while we are prepared, we don't believe that there is a high risk. This, of course, raises new questions.
Korean researchers became the first in the world to prove the precision of CRISPR-Ct1, a new DNA editing technology. Their research has raised hopes and expectations for new treatments for cancer and hereditary diseases.
The protests came after the death of a young man in police custody earlier this week. Some 200 locals and 180 police officers were involved in the clashes, which resulted in the arrest of 9 people. Reports say 15 cars and dozens of public garbage bins were set on fire by the protesters. Reportedly, police have raided 2 different addresses in Val Sud neighborhood after the clashes.
Using tear gas and brutal tactics, French authorities have forcibly evacuated their 26th refugee camp in Paris this year. As many as 3,000 people have been rendered homeless and not been given long-term housing, meaning they'll be back on the streets soon. Most of the refugees were from conflict zones that have been drastically worsened thanks to French interference: Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia. Despite playing such a significant role in the creation of the world's worst refugee crisis since World War II, France is constantly criticized for not doing enough to resolve the crisis.
France welcomes a small number of refugees, and it's a very small number given the global emergency. It is also too small for a country with the size of France's population and economy. We are calling on Paris and all of Europe to process at least 300,000 asylum seekers this year to make a dent in the refugee crisis.
New UK Prime Minister Theresa May recently met with her French counterpart, and they agreed to maintain the status quo at the notorious Calais refugee camp, which confines some 7,300 people amid atrocious conditions. During the run-up to the Brexit vote, France had threatened to push the UK asylum seekers to Dover, England, but many were aware that this was just a scare tactic. The UK simply refuses to process asylum seekers from Calais, and in exchange they send millions of euros each year to pay for the costs of Calais. France has little leverage, and they also do a purposely bad job of receiving, processing, and accepting asylum seekers.
France and the UK are not meeting their international obligations in Clay. Our mission in the camp has discovered many people who have every legal right to migrate to the UK and who have families ready to receive them. We hope to see some significant progress by the end of the year.
Both May and Hollande have waged xenophobic crackdowns on immigrants, but France and EU leaders insist that the newly independent UK cannot access their common market without allowing the free movement of people. It's an issue which may not be resolved until 2019, when Britain's exit from the EU is expected to become final. Ramin Mazaheri, Press TV, Paris.
Sickening more than 100 people and leaving farmers scrambling for clean water during some of the hottest days of the year, a huge toxic algae bloom in Utah has closed one of the largest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi River. The bacteria, commonly known as blue-green algae, has spread rapidly to cover almost all of the 150 square mile Utah lake. The water has turned a bright antifreeze green with a pea soup texture. It's left a scummy foam along the shore. While Utah Lake doesn't provide drinking water, its closure is causing big problems for farmers with thirsty crops. In addition, Utah Poison Control says it has fielded hundreds of calls related to the bloom. 130 of them have involved people reporting vomiting, diarrhea, headache, and rashes.